When life hits you, and I mean hits you hard with disappointment, betrayal, confusion, or chaos, the easiest thing to do is to react. That's what our emotions want to do. The moment that text comes through, the second that shade gets thrown, the instant somebody questions your worth, that's when reaction tries to take the wheel. You want to defend yourself, you want to prove a point, you want to let them know they can't play with you. But family, reacting might feel strong, but it's not strength. Reacting is survival. Responding, now that's power. See, reacting is like fire. It burns quick, it burns hot, but it burns out. Responding is like light. It's steady, intentional, and it illuminates without destroying. The fire in you is not the problem. The problem is when you let the fire run wild without purpose. The pause, that sacred, still, uncomfortable pause, that's where God steps in. That's where clarity shows up. That's where you stop reacting out of emotion and start responding out of vision. I had to learn this the hard way. There were seasons when my emotions were louder than my faith. Times when my reactions spoke before my prayers did. Times when I was so desperate to be heard, I forgot to listen, and every time I reacted, I gave away a little bit of my power. Because reaction hands control to the thing that triggered you. But when you pause, even for a moment, you remind yourself that your peace isn't up for negotiation. That pause is holy ground. It's where wisdom whispers, you don't have to fight every battle. You don't have to prove what God already settled. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is nothing, not because you don't care, but because you know who you are. Power doesn't prove itself, power knows itself. Let me tell you, the enemy doesn't always come to destroy you outright. Sometimes he just wants to get a reaction. He wants you flustered, distracted, emotionally exhausted. Because if he can control your reaction, he can control your rhythm. And once he's got your rhythm, he's got your focus. That's why every interruption, every irritation, every moment of tension, it's a test. The test isn't about what happens to you, it's about what happens in you when it does. When you pause before you react, you give space for revelation. You give God a chance to show you what's really going on. Because sometimes the attack isn't personal, it's positional. You're reacting to something that's meant to reveal where you're growing. The same thing that tried to provoke you might be the thing God's using to promote you, if you can stay still long enough to see it. Some of us are so used to fighting that we forget peace is also a weapon. We think silence means surrender. But silence, when it's rooted in discernment, is strategy. Not every comment deserves your clapback. Not every rumor deserves your rebuttal. Not every invitation deserves your attendance. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to not move until you've got divine instruction. Because when you react from flesh, you make flesh decisions. But when you respond from spirit, you make destiny decisions. You've got to ask yourself, am I reacting because I'm hurt, or am I responding because I'm healed? There's a difference. Hurt speaks fast, healed speaks wise. Hurt wants to fix it now. Healed knows some things fix themselves in silence. Hurt says, I'm going to show them who I am. Healed says, I already know who I am. See, reaction is loud because insecurity needs volume. But when you're grounded in who you are, you don't need to prove it. You just live it. There's a strength that comes from stillness that reaction will never touch. Because stillness requires trust. Trust that God saw it. Trust that He heard it. Trust that He'll handle it better than you ever could. And when you can trust like that, you walk different. You stop responding to everything that doesn't carry your peace. You stop letting temporary people pull you out of permanent purpose. I know it's hard. I know that pause feels like pressure. You're sitting there, replaying what happened, imagining what you could have said, what you should have said. But let me tell you, silence is not weakness. It's strategy in disguise. The pause doesn't mean you don't have a response. It means you're choosing when and how to release it. You're letting wisdom set the timing, not your temper. Because here's the truth, when you react too soon, you often end up apologizing later. But when you respond with intention, you walk away with peace, and peace, my friend, is priceless. Don't trade it for the satisfaction of a moment. Don't lose it proving a point that doesn't even need proof. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all, and let the fruit of your life do the talking. You don't have to match energy when you're made of purpose. You don't have to mirror chaos when you're carrying calling. You're not here to show the world how fast you can react. You're here to show the world how deeply you can respond. Because power isn't about how loud you are in the storm, it's about how calm you are in it. And that calm, that pause, that moment of stillness before the fire, that's where transformation happens. That's where you step out of being triggered and step into being trusted, trusted by God to handle the next level without letting the old level pull you back. Because you can't walk in new power with old reactions. You can't speak from authority if you're still speaking from anger. You can't lead with clarity if you're still living in chaos. So the next time someone tests your patience, the next time life throws you something you didn't see coming, pause. Breathe, pray, recenter. Remember that reaction is easy, but easy doesn't make you powerful. Anybody can react. But only those who know who they are can respond. That pause is your power. That stillness is your strategy. And that calm in the middle of the fire, that's your crown. Because when you pause before the fire, you don't lose control. You become it. When you've been through pain, real pain of the kind that shakes your trust, wounds your confidence, and steals your breath, it's hard not to let that pain speak for you. It shows up in your tone, your posture, your words. You tell yourself you're fine, but the truth is, pain has a way of holding the microphone even after the song has ended. You don't mean to react the way you do, but when pain is still driving, every situation feels like a threat. Every question feels like judgment, and every silence feels like rejection. That's what reacting does. It lets pain choose your words before purpose has a chance to rewrite them. But hear me, your pain is not disqualified from purpose. It just can't lead it. The same pain that tried to break you can also become the evidence that you survived if you let healing take the stage. Reaction will always speak first. It's fast, it's fiery, it's protective. But response is what happens when you've let God do surgery on the places pain tried to hide. Response says, I still feel it, but it doesn't control me anymore. Response says, I've learned to speak from my healing, not my hurt. There was a time when I couldn't tell the difference. I thought defending myself meant I was strong. I thought setting fire to everything that hurt me meant I was free. But I was just reacting. My reaction was loud because my pain was still screaming, and when pain is loud, wisdom gets quiet. You stop hearing what's real, and you start fighting ghosts. You start answering questions no one asked. You start proving things no one doubts but you. That's what happens when pain still has the mic. It convinces you that healing is weakness and reaction is strength. But God will let you run out of words. He'll let your reactions burn themselves out. Because there comes a point when you realize that being loud doesn't mean being right, and being right doesn't mean being whole. Sometimes the real power is in letting your pain sit down so your peace can stand up. Healing doesn't silence you, it refines you. It teaches you when to speak and when to stay still. It teaches you that not every fight deserves your energy, and not every comment deserves your comeback. Healing shifts your voice from defense to destiny. You can always tell when someone's reacting out of pain. The words cut deep, but they come from a wound that's never been cleaned. That's why the same trigger keeps coming back. Because God doesn't heal what you hide, He heals what you hand over. And sometimes He'll let you face the same situations again and again until you realize the problem isn't the people. It's the pain that keeps responding for you. Let me tell you something, pain is persuasive. It'll convince you that everyone's out to hurt you, that vulnerability is dangerous, that forgiveness means forgetting. But healing is wiser than pain. Healing says you can acknowledge what happened without living in it. Healing says you don't have to keep rehearsing what you've already released. Healing says you can love again, trust again, hope again, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. There's a version of you that's waiting on the other side of your reaction. That version doesn't flinch when triggered. She doesn't respond to prove her worth. She doesn't need the last word to feel seen. She's not afraid of silence anymore because she knows silence is where Strength matures, that version of you responds not out of emotion but out of revelation. She's not afraid to say, I'm still healing, but I'm not who I was. That's the power of growth. It doesn't mean you don't feel the fire, it means you've learned not to live in it. Some of you are still fighting with words that came from an old wound. You're trying to protect yourself with a defense that doesn't even fit the season you're in anymore. That sharp tone, that quick reaction, that distance, that's pain trying to keep you safe. But safety and peace aren't the same thing. Safety builds walls, peace builds wisdom. Safety isolates, peace invites. Safety says, never again. Peace says, even if it happens again, I'll still be okay. And that shift from reaction to response, that's the mark of maturity. That's when healing starts talking louder than hurt. Sometimes God will send people who test your triggers just to show you how far you've come. The same situation that used to break you doesn't move you anymore. The same name that used to make your chest tighten now makes you smile in peace. That's what it means to respond instead of react. It's not about pretending it didn't hurt. It's about refusing to let it define you. You're not reacting because you're weak. You're responding because you're wise. You've learned that peace costs less than pride, and it's not easy. Healing will make you face what you tried to outrun. It'll ask you to forgive people who never said sorry. It'll ask you to release stories you've told yourself just to survive. But when you start responding instead of reacting, you realize you're not just surviving anymore, you're living. You start seeing that the very pain that made you bitter is now birthing wisdom. The tears that once drowned you are now watering your growth. Every scar becomes a sentence in your testimony. So the next time you feel that surge, that heat rising in your chest, that urge to clap back, that need to prove your worth, pause. Ask yourself, who's talking right now, my pain or my healing? Because one will keep you stuck and the other will set you free. Don't let your pain be the narrator of your story when healing has already rewritten the ending. Let your response carry the evidence of your evolution. Let your peace be the punctuation at the end of what pain tried to write. You don't have to defend who you are when you've healed from who you were. You don't have to shout to be heard when peace speaks through your presence. You don't have to fight every battle when you've already won the war within yourself. That's the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting keeps you in the moment. Responding keeps you in your purpose. Reacting gives pain another chance to perform. Responding gives healing the microphone, and baby, healing's got a better song to sing, because when you stop letting pain choose your words, you stop repeating old chapters. You start writing new ones, and every word you speak from a healed place echoes with power that pain could never hold. There's a difference between knowing the word and living it. There's a difference between quoting peace and carrying it. Anybody can talk faith when life is soft, but real maturity shows up when life cuts you deep and you still choose to walk in love. See, reacting is easy because it comes from emotion, but responding, that's spiritual work. That's where growth lives. That's where you learn that not every storm deserves your thunder, and not every confrontation deserves your crown. Responding is what happens when you've walked long enough with God to know that silence can speak louder than shouting. There was a time when I thought maturity meant never feeling angry, never being hurt, never crying about what I should have outgrown. But that's not true. Maturity isn't about not feeling it. It's about learning what to do with what you feel. It's about knowing that just because you can doesn't mean you should. You can clap back, sure. You can post the sub, make the call, send the text, but sometimes spiritual maturity says no. That's not where my power is, because power isn't in proving your point. Power is in protecting your peace. I used to think silence meant weakness, that if I didn't say something, if I didn't defend myself, I was letting people walk all over me. But then God taught me that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let him do the talking. When you react, you take the fight into your own hands. When you respond, you hand it back to him. And the moment you do, he fights differently. He fights in ways you can't. He handles hearts you can't reach. He restores things your reaction would have destroyed. That's why responding isn't passive, it's powerful. It says, I trust God's justice more than I trust my impulse. Spiritual maturity looks like standing in the middle of conflict and saying, I could go off right now, but I won't. It looks like choosing peace even when chaos feels more satisfying. Because let's be real, reaction feels good for a moment. It scratches that itch for control, but it always costs you something later. You might feel powerful when you send the message, but you'll feel empty when you realize you gave away your peace. And when peace is gone, everything feels heavy. The momentary satisfaction of reaction will never outweigh the long-term security of response. Responding requires discernment. It asks you to look beyond the surface to see the spirit behind the situation. You start realizing not every person is your enemy. Some are just reflecting your old pain. Not every disagreement is an attack. Some are opportunities to practice self-control. You start to hear God even in the tension. He'll whisper, "Don't move yet. Don't say that. Don't answer that call," because sometimes the enemy doesn't come to destroy you, he comes to distract you. And if you can be distracted, you can be delayed. But when you respond instead of react, you close the door to delay. Some of us are so used to fighting that we don't know what peace feels like without a battle. You've been defending yourself for so long that peace feels foreign. But spiritual maturity says you don't have to fight everything that moves. You've got to learn to pick your peace over your pride. Sometimes you've got to let people be wrong about you and still love them anyway, because maturity isn't about winning arguments, it's about winning peace. It's about realizing that defending yourself might clear your name, but it can also cloud your purpose. Do you know how much strength it takes to stay silent when everything in you wants to react? That's what spiritual muscles look like. It's not about what you can lift in the gym, it's about what you can't hold in your spirit without dropping your faith. It's about knowing that the storm outside doesn't have to dictate the storm inside. It's learning that your emotions don't get to run your assignment. And when you master that, when you start responding from wisdom instead of reacting from wounds, that's when heaven starts trusting you with more. Because God can't promote what's still petty. He can't bless what's still bitter. He can't build on a foundation that cracks every time pressure comes. Responding means you've learned to keep your foundation steady, even when people try to shake it. It means you've learned to stay still long enough to hear his voice over your own. And when you do, you realize that sometimes the answer isn't louder words, it's deeper peace. There's a story in every one of us where we reacted and regretted it later. You said something, did something, posted something, and afterward you felt it in your spirit. That little nudge that says that wasn't move. But then there are moments when you held your tongue, walked away, and later you saw how God handled it better than you ever could. That's the power of response. It might not make you look strong in the moment, but it makes you wise in the long run. Maturity will make you choose peace even when pride feels louder. It'll make you apologize first, even when you weren't the one who started it. It'll make you bless people who never blessed you back. It'll make you show grace where you used to show anger, because you've learned that peace isn't weakness, it's warfare. Every time you respond with grace, you're fighting differently. You're fighting with restraint. You're fighting with faith. You're fighting knowing that you don't have to control the outcome when you surrendered the outcome to God. When you start living like that, you start carrying a different kind of authority. People won't always understand it. They'll call you quiet, distant, or even cold. But they don't know you've just learned to conserve your energy for where it matters. You're not reacting because you're numb, you're responding because you're focused. You've learned that the goal isn't to win arguments, it's to win alignment. You've learned that silence can be prophetic, that sometimes your peace says more than your words ever could. You can tell when someone's grown. They stop talking about what offended them and start praying for what needs healing. They stop fighting battles they've already outgrown. They stop trying to fix what's not theirs to carry. That's what responding looks like. It's wisdom in motion, it's love under pressure, it's faith that doesn't flinch. And when you live from that place, you stop needing validation from reaction. You already know who you are. It takes power to be calm when chaos surrounds you. It takes growth to choose wisdom when war is easier. And it takes real spiritual maturity to stay grounded when everything around you wants to pull you out of character. But when you do, when you choose to respond instead of react, you become unshakable. Not because the storm isn't real, but because you finally learned who you are in it. Because reacting is loud, but responding is legacy. Reclaiming the narrative isn't about pretending the story didn't happen. It's about deciding how it ends, because every one of us has had a moment or maybe a whole season where we lost control of the narrative. Something happened that we didn't plan for, didn't pray for, didn't see coming. Somebody left, somebody lied, something broke. And in that moment, it felt like the story was being written without our consent. We reacted out of pain, out of anger, out of fear. We tried to fix it, explain it, defend it. But here's what I've learned. Every time you react, you give the pen to the moment. Every time you respond, you take it back. You have to understand your reaction keeps you stuck in the chapter that hurt you. Your response moves you toward the chapter that heals you. That's what reclaiming the narrative looks like. It's not denying the pain. It's deciding that the pain won't be the headline. It's saying, yes, that happened, but it's not how my story ends. The enemy loves to trap you in reaction mode because as long as you're reacting, you're not growing. You're rehearsing. You're rewriting the same page again and again, never realizing that the power to turn the page has been in your hand the whole time. I know what it's like to feel like your story got away from you, to feel like people are telling it wrong, to feel misunderstood, mislabeled, misjudged. That's when the temptation to react feels strongest, when you want to clear your name, when you want to set the record straight, when you want to make sure everybody knows your side. But reacting keeps you chasing validation from people who never cared to understand you in the first place. Responding says, I don't need you to tell my story when I've already decided who I am. That's power, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that stands. You can't reclaim the narrative until you stop trying to rewrite it for everyone else. The story isn't theirs to understand, it's yours to own. And owning it doesn't mean explaining every detail. It means accepting that some parts of your story are sacred, not shared. Some parts are still being healed, not performed. Some parts are still private, not public, and that's okay. Because when you respond with peace instead of reacting with proof, you start to see that not everyone deserves access to your process. Growth doesn't need an audience, it just needs honesty. There was a time when I used to let everything and everyone narrate my life. People's opinions, expectations, disappointments, all of it had a say. If someone didn't clap, I questioned myself. If someone misunderstood me, I over-explained. But there comes a point where you realize that the story God is writing in you doesn't require their approval. It only requires your obedience. That's when you stop reacting to every whisper and start responding to your calling. That's when you take back the pen. Reclaiming the narrative means you stop letting pain, fear, and shame write your dialogue. Because those voices are loud, but they're not final. They'll tell you you're stuck. They'll tell you it's too late. They'll tell you your mistake defines you. But responding says, no, I've learned something. I've changed. I've healed. That's how you rewrite the story without erasing it. You take what tried to destroy you and turn it into what developed you. You take the reaction that once controlled you and turn it into revelation that guides you. That's redemption, not rewriting the past, but reclaiming your power over it. Some of you are still living in someone else's version of your story. They called you broken, and you started believing it. They said you'd never make it, and you let that become your motivation instead of your memory. But you can't build peace from a place of proving. You can't live freely while still reacting to what they said. You've got to let the old version of you rest. The one that needed to explain, to defend, to prove. She was surviving, but you're evolving, and evolution doesn't ask for permission. Reclaiming the narrative also means taking responsibility for how you tell it. You can't keep telling the story like you're still in it if God already delivered you from it. Stop speaking like the pain is current when it's already conquered. Every time you repeat the old version, you give it life again, but when you respond from the healed place, the story shifts. It becomes less about what they did and more about what you learned, less about how it broke you and more about how it built you. That's what happens when you respond. You move from victim to vessel. You start realizing that what happened to you doesn't have the final word. It's what happens in you that matters. Because sometimes God will let you lose control of the story just so you can learn how to surrender it back to Him. You thought the pain disqualified you, but it actually positioned you. You thought the delay was denial, but it was development. You thought the rejection was punishment, but it was protection. The narrative was never against you. It was just being rewritten for your growth. And yes, it hurts to let go of the need to react, because reacting feels like power when you don't feel seen. But the real power is in restraint. The real power is in responding with grace when you could respond with fire. That's how you reclaim your authority, not by proving what happened, but by showing what it produced. You're not who you were in that story anymore. You've evolved, you've healed, you've grown, you've learned to speak from a healed heart instead of a hurt ego. The moment you stop reacting, the narrative shifts. You stop being the victim of the story and start being the author of the comeback. You stop living in the memory of what broke you and start building from the strength of what healed you. You stop repeating what went wrong and start revealing what went right. And the people who thought they knew your story will have to read it again because the ending has changed. You may not be able to rewrite what happened, but you can rewrite what it means. That's the beauty of responding. Responding takes the same story that used to embarrass you and turns it into something that empowers you. It takes what once made you cry and makes it the reason you smile. It takes what once made you hide and makes it what makes you stand tall. That's what power looks like. Not control over what happened, but peace in who you've become because of it. So don't let your reaction keep telling a story you've already outgrown. Don't let fear narrate what faith is still writing. Don't let pain have the final paragraph when healing is still speaking. Reclaim the pen, reclaim your peace. Reclaim your power because you can't always control the plot, but you can always choose the voice that tells it. And when you respond instead of react, you don't just change your story, you change your legacy.